Hey everyone, before this episode begins, I want to let you know that I just started a brand new Secret Sonics Discord server. So if you want to join the community, head on over there. There'll be a link in the show notes. Go check it out. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 118 with Antonia Gauci. I had a great chat with Antonia and we talked about so many things, including balancing between engineering and being an artist. We talked about vocal production, remembering that it's about the song. We talked about mixing, her approach to mixing, including her unique approach to reverb automation. We talked about dedicating herself to the production she works on, giving it 100%. We also talked about management and self-care. So tons of great takeaways here. I think you're going to love this conversation. So with all that to say, here's my chat with Antonia Gauci here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Antonia Gauci. Antonia is an engineer, mixer, producer, and artist based in Sydney, Australia. Her credits are astounding, having worked with artists including Kesha, Lil Yachty, What's So Not, Troye Sivan, DMAs, Japanese Wallpaper, Seven Under Feel, alongside a growing client list of Australia's most promising acts. Former guest of the show, Ruby Smith, recommended I reach out to Antonia, who's graciously agreed to join me on the air. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Antonia.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You know, I know you have your hands in a lot of things. You know, you're mixing, you're producing, you're doing everything in between. But how did it all begin for you? You know, when did music become a thing that was important to you, and how did that evolve into the production world?
I've been in music since I was little, so like taking piano lessons and dance lessons and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until like high school that I was kind of more interested in it and spent all my time like looking for stuff on the internet to listen to and bands I liked and artists and all that sort of stuff. And then kind of just fell into it by accident. I did the music course in my high school, and then a part of it was like composition and recording, and we had like this really simple multi-track recorder, and I ended up like figuring out how it worked and helped everyone else in my class how to use it. And then not long after that, I found an ad in like a music publication that was like, here are some music schools you can study at, and like recording is an actual thing you can do. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll give this a go. Like it sounds really interesting. I had no idea of how anything worked at all. And I had my interview and I was like, cool. And they were like, yeah, well, you seem keen. Like, let's have you on board and see what happens. And the rest is kind of just like kept going from there, I suppose. But yeah, like you said.
Which school was this
in
Sydney?
Oh, yeah. So I went to the Australian Institute of Music in Sydney. So like one of the leading schools there, they offer a bunch of different things like musical theatre, composition, artist management, audio technology, performance, probably some new stuff that I don't know about.
Yeah. So did you kind of have like a more traditional kind of trajectory from there? Like, I think, you know, people that kind of go to the music school sometimes go into the bigger studios, do internships, kind of work their way up the ranks? Or was it kind of more of a freelancer, DIY situation after that? What did that look like?
It was kind of like a bit of both for me. When I first graduated, I got employed by the school. So I worked there for maybe a year, just helping around doing stuff in the live sound department. But one of the lecturers there offered me an internship somewhere else. So I went and did that for a little bit. But at the same time, I was doing like freelance assisting, like podcast stuff for FBI Radio, which is a station here in Sydney, which is awesome. I love that station.
FBI?
Yeah, I still work there these days too, just doing stuff behind the scenes.
Nice.
But yeah, and then so it's kind of just like lots of little different things, like some stuff in film, production assistant stuff or whatever. But then eventually I got another internship at this studio called BJB, or Big Jesus Burger. And that was through a friend who I met at the university, and she was just doing stuff there, being like receptionist and admin thing. And she's like, my friend would be really good And then the rest is history from there. That was like my really big foot in the door. I met a lot of the people that I work with today from that studio. And yeah, learned so much, and I'm still learning every day. Yeah.
Yeah, always learning. That's the most important thing. I feel like that's what keeps you interested in continuing to do and to get better at your craft. And you know, life is a journey of learning. I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So was there a moment in all of that, the aha moment that you had, like, oh, this is happening. This is what I'm about. This is what's going to be. Like, was there a moment in any of that time period where you just kind of had it all click?
I guess like when I first landed my full-time position at a studio a couple of years after that, that's kind of like when it all clicked, because it was like, I don't have to, work a job in a shop or a chemist at the same time as like trying to do audio stuff. So that was kind of like the aha moment where it kind of it started to take over and be more of a permanent thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, amazing. I don't know what that is, because I've only really ever been able to do the freelance kind of DIY approach, because when I got started, like, I think I'm a little older than you, but when I got started here, there was like nowhere to start working in like a studio, and like I had no choice. I opened up shop, you know what I mean, in order to kind of do this thing that I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
So
but I guess another thing with me is like when these little like opportunities came up, I was always like, yes, that's because that's going to lead me to where I want to go later. So and then it kind of just like kept meeting more people who would give you more opportunities. And then from being at this studio as well, when that closed, because I knew more people, they like recommended me to other people who were looking for people to assist them on sessions and stuff. And then it got to a point where I was working at like all the studios. And then one of them just like snapped me up and was like, hey, we need you full time. And I was like, awesome. So yeah, like combo of everything.
How much of like your success do you attribute to your education in the Australian Institute of Music? You said, because I know people talk about, there's no actual real world, stuff in there, but you make connections and you meet people. And some people say, what, actually, I was like super prepared for the job after I got out of it. Like, where do you fall on that spectrum?
I think for me, it's like a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, because I literally knew nothing. So I learned a lot, but at the end of it, you step out into the big bad world and you're like, oh, I actually don't know anything, but you kind of do at the same time. But then I guess it's just like, it's totally different learning it and then putting into practice too. Like you realize that all these rules and you're like, don't do this and phase and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, but yeah, who cares? If it sounds good, it sounds good. And like that was really cool to kind of see that happen
in the real world.
Yeah.
I know Australia has this Triple J radio, which kind of like helps independent, like young artists kind of get their start.
Yeah.
Did that have anything to do with you, or like, I don't know? It seems like it's awesome that Australia has this like infrastructure for people to kind of, stuff that like my country doesn't have and America doesn't have. Like.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
maybe indirectly.
Yeah, there are a couple of things I worked on when I was first starting out. That there's this program on there called Home and Hose, which is, I think it still was at the time and is still presented by Declan Byrne. Oh, it was Dom Alessio at the time. But a lot of things that I worked on, because they were like up and coming artists from Sydney and Australia, got a like, their first play would be on that. And that was like a really good exposure. And then it was also like a really good win for me from their like success. So it did help in the beginning, but now I work with like way more emerging artists as well. So sometimes they're not on such, like they haven't hit that spot of what like Triple J covers.
Yeah. Well, emerging artists is great, getting to be there at the beginning of their journey is awesome. So tell me a little bit about, how work works for you. Like, how do you find artists to work with, and who are your clients, and how do you find them?
It's kind of like a huge mix of a lot of things, I guess, because I'm a musician myself. Like, I play shows, I go to shows, so I meet people there. I meet people through friends. People like cold email me or cold DM me on Instagram or whatever. And yeah, it's kind of just like, word of mouth too. It's just a bit of everything. So got to check all the inboxes.
So mostly like word of mouth and
Yeah,
just
yeah. I guess that's like the beauty of this a little bit. It's just like when people hear your work and they're moved by it and they're like, wow, that's sick. Like, who did that? Then they can like look for you and contact you. So
yeah.
I think that's important.
That seems to be the best, getting the right artists to work with you is like
Yeah.
people that love the work you did.
Yeah.
And I had an interesting conversation with this guy on my show named Travis Ferentz, who also has a podcast called Progressions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling him like, yeah, your Imagine Dragons, credit, that must be the reason why you're getting all this work.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I would say no way. Like people are calling me about this like random indie, record I made 10 years ago that people are obsessed with.
Yeah.
And like, it's like the music that musicians love that, can so often lead to them contacting you because you had a part in that, I think.
Well, sometimes, especially with this industry, like, something might take 2-3 years to come out after you've worked on it, like depending on where you've worked on it in, the lifespan of the song. But then sometimes, it could be released and could sit on a shelf or not sit on a shelf, but like nothing could happen. And then some random situation where it gets a sync or whatever, and then it like completely explodes. Like, you never know what's going to happen ever, really.
Yeah,
Or how long it will take to do anything. And sometimes it's like you're working on a song, you're like, this is the best thing ever. Like, oh my gosh, on, whether it's mixing or writing or, singing or anything. And then sometimes it just doesn't land with people too. So, or, it's released at the same time that someone else drops their album. Like I was talking to my friend today and he was like, every release week is kind of like a bad release week compared to who you're like, because you never know who you're timing it against. It's like, an independent artist could be putting out against like, a huge artist from your country or whatever.
Yeah.
But
oh, sorry, Billie Eilish just dropped her record this week also.
Yeah, so we're not listening to anything from Australia. Yeah, so.
Right.
But and another thing that another friend has told me is just like the most important thing is that with everything that you put out is that you're always moving forward, whether it's like, you're bettering the work. Or
the quality of the work.
The quality of the work. It's just like, doesn't matter if it doesn't hit because as long as you're improving, like later down the line, someone could be like, I love that song you released like 700 years ago. So
yeah. And I think it's two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
Because, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast is people are so precious about their music. They want to get it perfect before they release it. But like, no, if you release it, eventually you're going to put out enough songs that one of them will stick and be great. And like everything gets better over time. And like, you got to just keep moving, keep doing. I feel like that's like it's like a lesson that's like super important. And I think a lot of young artists need to hear that. And some of the best stuff I've worked on has not been released because, artists are just too precious and they're not willing to just put it out there and get their foot, put their feet in the water,
I feel
get
you
their hands
on that.
dirty.
I feel you on that. And another thing as well is like, sometimes it doesn't, like sometimes you just got to get over it and just, you put all that aside and be like, the song is really good. Maybe it doesn't sound the best, but like people are going to think about the song more than what the sonics of the song is. Like, oh, the kick's not loud enough or the like vocals too bright or whatever. Like it doesn't matter if the performance is good and the song is like amazing. Like that kind of takes over everything else in the end. Like talking about that aspect of it like helps to let go a bit more about the mix or whatever. But I am a perfectionist as well.
I oh my God, me too, to a fault for sure. I think that's probably why we do what we do.
Yeah.
It's because we're perfectionists.
Yeah.
But it's definitely hurt me more than it's helped me, I think.
Oh yeah.
But it's true. It's like our job is obviously super important and we're obsessed with it. And we're doing it also because of the albums that sounded so good that we listened to growing up that we loved. But it doesn't really matter because the song is the song, Like, the Beatles, records that, sounded weird in stereo are still the best songs. You know what I mean? Like, it's about the song. So actually I want to talk to you a little bit about your artist work. You have a band called Gauci, and I loved also how you were saying before earlier how like, the fact that you're an artist has really helped you with your productions and people getting to know who you are. And I've definitely felt the same way, like in my like very small scene here in Jerusalem, like having been an artist and, a musician playing with other musicians really helps kind of get the word out of who you are and what you're about. Yeah, tell me a little bit about your project and what's involved in it.
So it's me and my brother David and our amazing friend Felix.